Brought to you by Telehelping, a virtual assistant staffing company for professionals.
Hello everyone, my name is Cody, and I'm the host of The Faces. Entrepreneurs are people too, and the founding CEO of Telehelping, a virtual staffing organization, and the herein bill payer of my podcast. So I appreciate you, Telehelping, for allowing me to waste some time every day talking to cool people like James. James, how are you doing today?
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for having me.
No, James, I'm excited. For all you know, we have different hedges behind us. We are not in the same room. However, we do both admire good foliage. So, James, before we jump too much into our green thumbs, go ahead and chat with us. Who is James? Who are we chatting with here today?
Yeah, I'm James Gorzynski with Certified Exit Planners. The boxwood behind me is from a recommendation from my wife, and ironically, I work with her as well. Spend a lot of time outdoors with golfing, have a dog named Rocket, and just got back from a trip from Glacier National Park. So a little bit about me there, but taking a pause there and switching a little bit to the Certified Exit Planner side with the professional side. I used to be in data analytics, accounting. I was a fractional CFO for quite a while and kind of fell in the M&A space. I had a successful exit several years ago and really love that space. And I continue to have a lot of conversations with folks in the M&A side where they're looking to sell their business, and a lot of them just weren't prepared. So I kind of took a step back, repositioned, and ended up getting my CEPA, which is a Certified Exit Planning Advisor credential. And now I spend a lot of time in that space on the strategic side with putting together a exit plan for folks looking to exit 2 to 5 years out. So doing both at the same time with two different teams, but that's a very big part of my day.
That's great. James, at Telehelping, we work with a handful of brokers for companies, right? And so, they're always like finding buyers and then, finding sellers and then, matchmaking, right? Is that what you're doing? Or are you more so in like, hey, Cody's I'm trying to sell this bad boy 2 to 5 years from now. I'm going to talk with James. Is that more of you? Or are you doing a little bit of that as well?
Absolutely. We're doing both basically. So in an ideal situation, someone comes to us with a 2 to 5, even 10-year exit timeline, or maybe they don't have any intention of actually selling anytime soon, but they just want to start the preparation. Generally, when you look at the data and the statistics on the back end, it's very, very clean and clear that if you hire professionals on your team and you have the proper amount of time, then you're going to see usually between 50, 100, 400x essentially ROI on going through an exit plan. So in an ideal situation, you're 2 to 5 years out. If you want a quicker cadence, you want to start drumming up some business on the M&A side. So the whole idea on the exit plan is let's look for low-hanging fruit, add value, make sure we have a timeline that's reasonable. And then while we're doing that, we're doing pre-exit research on the brokerage side. So once we've hit, hey, I want to sell in 12 months or less, we flip the switch on the brokerage side. We've already had pre-vetted buyers ready to go. Hopefully we have quite a few offers on the table and kind of shorten it. So the idea is to streamline it and have a lot more of a customer service aspect to it versus, passing you off to another team. We're doing both for you at the same time.
I like that. There was a point in time where I think I wanted to sell Telehelping within the 5-year mark, and now we're at the 5-year mark, and I don't want to sell. So you definitely could, and I think that's what Let's talk about like why a person sells a company, because I've had successful exits, and I've both had ones where they're like, oh, this is a good plan, and then I had ones where I'm like, I think I just want to sell. Right? I just woke up one day and I said, I'm done. Right? Like I want to sell my position. And so, what really leads a person to want to sell? Do you see people like gearing up for retirement, or do you just think people want to go different directions every so many years to keep things fresh?
Every person's going to have a different motivation, and that's part of our discovery period. I'd say a good portion are moving towards that retirement phase. So maybe they're in their 50s, 60s, and they're kind of moving to the next chapter of their life, and they don't want to leave money on the table, pay too much in taxes, and want to spend more time with their family. The other type of client that we see are a little bit younger generation and are just kind of serial entrepreneurs. They want to sell the business in a specific timeline and then roll it into their next venture, so to speak, or just kind of take some time to think about it. So it really depends. And that's what's incredibly important about what we do. we look at it from three perspectives or three legs of the stool. The idea is that if you remove one of the legs of the stool falls over. So in a perfect world, you'd be looking at all three legs, make sure they're aligned. And one of those legs is the personal leg, which is what you're kind of referencing. The other is the business leg, which is where most entrepreneurs focus most of their time. And then the third one is the financial leg. Are you aligned with your financial planner, wealth manager? Because if you align all three of those, you're going to have a much more successful exit and generally more favorable post-sale situation as well, whether that's personal or looking at another business.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, I think I'm only 35, so I got another 5 years before I want to retire. And so I tried giving retirement a try. Funny enough, when I exited my healthcare company, I was like, if I'm just don't be stupid, like I will have enough the rest of my life, right? So I had to weigh how stupid I thought I was going to be, and then I'm like, I could do this. And so I spent, telehelping was still in existence because it started with the healthcare company, and I just had an operational leader, ran telehelping, kept it in existence, right? And I just really didn't do anything for 2 years. Hated it. I think I started 2 businesses during that time period, right? That's how well I retired, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've worked with quite a few clients that same boat where we actually have a life coach that we use or make a suggestion. So part of our services is having a discussion with them where it's kind of like a post-retirement assessment where, if you really want to start a new venture or like a hobby business or start something new, then that's part of our plan. That's part of the exit plan because you're absolutely right. A lot of people can't sit still. I know I can't. I took maybe 2-3 weeks off after I sold my company and I played a lot of golf. And then all of a sudden I just couldn't scratch the itch. Once you have it, you keep going. So it's very important to
Yeah.
be honest about it and kind of build your lifestyle around it. So.
I think 9 months to like the day after I exited my healthcare company, I opened the doors to my first restaurant. So you can assume there's a lot of planning and pre-work that went in there. So maybe I did like 3 months. Maybe there were 3 months. I think I was like 3 months into it and I forgot what month it was one day. And I was like, well, we got to do something about this. Because someone asked me like, oh, what month is it? And I was like, the warm month. It's a warm month. The sun outside. It's not rainy season. I know that's for sure. Oh, that's great. And so you work with your wife. And so what is your wife's responsibilities in the business besides decor?
Yeah, great question. I work mostly on the strategic side and the high level and really put together the plan and customize it, and very good at putting together the number side and making sure the math works out from all perspectives. My wife, Liz, is very good on the project management and implementation side. So a lot of the things we're doing have to have a certain cadence to effectively work. And to specifically give an example, on the M&A side, if someone's selling their business, there's a lot of parties involved in many cases. You might have an attorney on each side and you have a buyer and seller. And then so that there's 4 there. And then if you loop a broker and then some lenders and a few other things that are involved, making sure that someone's checking in constantly. That's what she really, yes, she can juggle a lot.
The
Very well.
juggling.
And keep everyone on track, including myself. So we complement each other quite a bit, but we have an extended team as well that does a lot of the similar work, but we just love working together. So that's always rewarding.
That's interesting too, because man, it sounds like there's a lot of people at the table trying to take a bite out of that deal. Do you, do you? One thing that we've not done in the past at telehelping is use third-party websites to drive traffic to us and brokers. We've been the same size for a while now, so I'm like opening myself up to it, mostly because I don't like giving money away to people for referrals and stuff. Like if a client refers someone, I'll give them free money all day because they're my client. But I don't like giving money to other people. Is there usually is this shark-infested waters when a company's selling? Are there a lot of people trying to, get their piece of the pie in this process, kind of like a real estate deal?
Great question. Yeah, I would liken it to a real estate deal, except much more complicated. And it's very similar in concept, I would say, the stages. But yeah, there's always a lot of folks trying to get a piece of the pie. And that's why I would always encourage people to kind of interview and talk to several people to make sure you're culturally aligned. I'm very laid back and fact driven and want to make sure the plan makes sense and it checks out from a numbers perspective. If you're looking for someone that is really trying to bring in a lot of parties and kind of overcomplicate things, then and that fits your plan, then great for you. But it really depends on what you want to accomplish there. So my advice there would be to kind of interview quite a few people and just make sure the culture side fits and they understand what you're trying to do, not just get you in the door, make the sale, and get out. We check in with our sellers after the sale, and then we try to help the buyers too. So the process never ends for us in reality. As an example, we checked back in with a seller from last year, and they had an issue, with a buyer that bought one of the companies that we were representing, and they were having some issues, and we connected with some of our referral partners. So to answer your question, yeah, there can be, but I find that what you project, you get back. And I think that most of the time we're working with some great people.
That's great. Yeah, I did M&A. It's funny, I just fall into M&A. And so it's just like you fall in one day, you're like, oh, wow, I lead merger and acquisitions. It's interesting. And I was in charge of buying one medical practice every month at this medical group. So at any point in time, I had 7 in the works, going through the process. And it was difficult because the easy part, which wasn't easy, was doing the buying portion, right? I felt we were going in, we were doing asset purchases because we didn't want to collect liability, right? Especially in healthcare. And then but then it gets complicated. Then you do rolling buyouts, debt acquisitions. And so there's all these different processes that I really didn't love because it's not as easy as hey, James, got a business. Here's $1 million. Thumbs up. Right? It's oh, are you going to fire my staff afterwards? Are you going to do this afterwards? What's it look like for them after this? Right? And so there's a lot that goes into, I still remember him to this day, Dr. Winkle, right? Practice out of Orange County, California. This guy was 85 years old. He sold his medical practice. He had that medical practice before the highway out front existed. Right? The medical practice was 40 years old, and everyone who worked there had worked there 15 years. And so it was a lot of we're not going to destroy this thing after you leave. We're just kind of going to bring it into the 21st century. And it was a really long practice acquisition for one that shouldn't have taken that long because there's a lot of real emotions associated with it.
Yeah, I find that happens much more often than it should. And a lot of that comes back to the timeline that we had talked about a little bit earlier, because if you kind of address the issues and understand what the ideal situation would be from a seller perspective and get ahead of it, then you can generally attract or find, going back to the term you mentioned, matchmake, it's a little bit easier. I've talked to quite a few firms that are going with more of a smaller mini PE or family office or, kind of model. And a lot of them won't even talk to certain business owners that aren't represented for that reason, because the value of having someone represented or involved earlier is that they can get to know them a little bit better and kind of understand where the pain points, and in the example you just gave, it was very emotional and obviously the employee perspective. So if you can get ahead of it and prep them and kind of build out the roadmap and say, hey, this is what to expect, then they're less likely, from the seller perspective to cause more issues and respond with emotion. So it's definitely one of those things that's not easy. I absolutely understand being in the seller position before, that you don't want to let it go and you care about your employees. But I think just talking about it and being honest about it is always helpful.
No, I agree. And I want to pose a scenario because I know a guy, right? Sold his company, maybe even in the same space as telehelping. And so he sold his company, and there were some, what we refer to as hooks in our conversation. I think that what happened was the organization bought the business from him. They were in the process of transitioning out all his clients to the parent company. And then once they drained it for what they were drained it, they then turned around and sued him for violation of his hook period that he had. They had him this period. That's a scary thing for a lot of people, because I myself, I couldn't breathe until 2 years after I was finally done with, my healthcare. I'll go 2 years out. They can't get me for anything. I'm not getting blamed for anything else, right? And healthcare is a scary thing, right? Cody made this decision back in, April 2020, 1 month into COVID. Cody made this decision, and now we're getting sued for this, and Cody's responsible, right? I was really trying to make it through my 2 year period. Is that a scary thing or something that you see a lot of?
Absolutely. That really comes into play when you're drafting the APA there, the asset purchase agreement that you kind of mentioned. The advantage of that side from the buyer is that you're not retaining the liability. But to answer your question, two things come to mind is making sure that you have a seasoned M&A attorney. It's happened several times where folks want to bring in a family member that's an attorney, but they don't specialize in M&A, and it
M&A.
never goes well. So that's one thing. Make sure that you have an M&A attorney that does this day in and day out and really understands the risk and can convey it to the seller, what the liability that they're carrying with negotiating that deal. A lot of times the numbers and the dollars are first and foremost, but to your point, the risk on the back end can be just as valuable or devaluable. And then the other thing is, I always try to get folks to consider, a rep and warranty insurance, and maybe even split that cost with the acquirer. A lot of times you can mitigate risk that way, where essentially if something goes awry, then you have an insurance policy on the transaction and can kind of bridge the gap a little bit. It wasn't very common about 20 years ago, and now it's starting to ramp up a little bit more, and more providers are considering it. So that would be one thing that you might want to consider if you are in that situation, because it is scary. I felt the same way as you did.
Yeah, and it was I think when it was August, okay, I did in August. So it was 2 years, August, next, like August 5th. I'm like, whoo, I made it.
It's in the
Can't
calendar.
touch me. Right, it was in the calendar. I was like, it was in July. I was like, one more month, haven't been served yet. And it is a real thing. And so that's great that you bring up the idea of like a seasoned attorney, because just because an attorney, I mean, law, right, is the biggest book in the English language. Law books, right? It's endless, right? And so, it's like having a doctor. It's like, oh, hey, listen, I have a friend who's a doctor. Like, oh, what are they? Like, oh, they're a pediatrician. And I'm like, well, great. I'm dealing with an active hemorrhage. I'm bleeding out here. I want an emergency physician. I don't want a dentist, right? And so I think it's important to understand, like, keeping it in mind that specificity in regards to the legalities is very important, because there's a lot of loopholes. So that's important. So shifting gears from the buying of things and the athletics, so you're a golf guy, right?
Sure.
Right. So you golf for how long before you realized that you just couldn't spend the rest of your life golfing?
I played quite a bit through high school. I played a lot of different sports, so it was mostly baseball, golf, soccer, and a little bit of hockey, pond hockey. But yeah, I'd say it was very obvious that I wasn't going to be the best of the best on that unless you really dedicated that amount of time and effort there. It's a pretty big time suck essentially. So if you're going through that, then it can really create a lot of issues. But I still enjoy it to this day. So I have a tournament coming up as well in a few weeks here with my dad. So very excited about that. And also why I'm kind of involved in this a little bit too is that my wife's side of the family, my side of the family, we're all kind of entrepreneurs. So it's just business, sports, golf, food. When you mentioned the restaurant earlier, I'm very curious what type of restaurant, you were running there. But
it's interesting because I surf and I play tennis. So funny you say, I try not to surf too much. I love surfing, and I live 5 minutes from the San Jose Los Cabos surf spot, right? Like every afternoon I go walking with my son, my wife, my dog on the beach, and we walk past the breaks. I try not to hang out there too much because I want my kid to surf, but I want my kid to like surfing too much, because I mean, when you're a surfer, bruh, nothing's really serious in life, right? You're just surfing the break, you're just hanging out. So I really love surfing. Can't do too much of it though, because I really want him to lean into tennis or soccer. More serious, more structured sports, more disciplined in regards to the other elements of life that are accompanied with it, right? Versus the ganja smoking folks out here on the beach who are the coolest people in the entire world, not going to be the people who are going to start a business with you. And so the guy who owns the surf shop on the beach, biggest dreads in the world, love him, great guy. Looks like he fell asleep with his son 30 years ago, right? However, tennis and soccer is where I want to push him through. So I play tennis every Saturday morning. We're lucky to have a huge complex here for the Cabo Open, which is a really cool opportunity to get him mixed into that. But on the restaurant side of things, so we own a Mexican style international restaurant. So our slogan is it's comida muy a la mexicana, pero international, right? It's very Mexican, but also international. And so it really is like, if you've ever heard of chilaquiles, or like we have like a ton of different types of enchiladas that vary in flavor that are, from your typical enchiladas, green, red, or all the way to like mole and then chipotle. And they have different names, enmoladas, embochadas, and so they're really great. The restaurant itself is in central Mexico, the first one, and my wife runs that for the most part. And so she is the acting owner of the restaurants, which is great. But it is a hilarious enough. We had someone try to buy us not too long ago, right? And I was in the position of like sell the restaurant, which we were able to. I don't know if you work with a lot of restaurants in the merger and acquisition side, but man, having a successful restaurant sometimes like trying to thread a needle at 1,000 yards, right? And so if you can do it, good job. Right. And we managed, never having any restaurant ability or experience other than working in restaurants, my wife and I, to have a successful restaurant. We have a very successful restaurant. It's a blessing. So we opened our multiple locations, and we had a second location that we opened up inside of the largest country club in Jalisco, Mexico. Right. Huge. So beautiful location. And the country club wanted to buy our restaurant. Right. They wanted to buy it. And we're like, great, make us an offer. Right, sure, I'm okay with it. And so they made us one of the most insulting offers I've ever seen. I can't even believe they put it on paper, right? It blew my mind. I was like, this doesn't even cover the equipment in the restaurant. We understand how much the restaurant cost, right? We had to retrofit this entire building, right, just to support the wattage and consumption that the coffee machine and everything. And so when they couldn't buy us, you know what they did? They shut down our restaurant at the country club, and they're like, okay, we can't buy you, so we're going to intervene. And it ended up we're just now getting ready to settle with them after almost 2.5 years of a lawsuit, which we're victorious in. But man, when they couldn't purchase us, they was like, all right, great, we're going to go about this another way.
Yeah, that's pretty ruthless. Were they canceling like the lease or something, or is that how they do it?
They even better. They just put locks on our door, and they would not allow our staff and us inside of the country club. Unfortunately for them, we are Mexican citizens. My wife's Mexican citizens. That is a violation of our constitutional rights, right? We technically own that property under the lease. And it wasn't my first day, so I paid for the lease like 3 years in advance. So I had the lease paid for like 3 years in advance. And then I also had a non-compete policy put into the lease agreement. So the entire club, like if you're going to consume food or beverage, it was going to be at my restaurant. And so they couldn't open up another restaurant to compete with us, so they had to shut us down. And then it was just like this back and forth. They cut our power and said it was a power issue. And it was like all this back and forth. And eventually we just got tangled up in lawsuits. But they were very aggressive. And since we permanently closed during the lawsuit, since the time that happened to time now, they built an entire restaurant complex and I mean, they could have just copied my menu, it seems like. And they bar, restaurant complex, but stone's throw away from where our facility was. But yeah, that's the world of money. I never would have thought that someone would have tried to buy us and then turn around and was like, oh, we can't buy you, then we will just shut you down.
That's a really crazy story. I mean, it's the thing is, nothing shocks me anymore when you kind of get into Yeah. Well, talking about your menu, the recipes there, how long is the cook time on the mole?
Well, I mean, people don't understand how much goes into the sauces and everything. I mean, they generally take about 2 or so days to do the sauces, especially like the salsa verde, the green sauce. It takes time. We used to have something called birria, and I think we may still have it on the menu. That takes 2 days. And so that's a slow roasted goat meat, right? And so that takes a long time to make. We put that in like we have a birria burrito, and then we have a birria chilaquiles, right? And so those things are, take a lot of time to prep. And the best part is if you come we're only open 5 days a week. So they do that on Monday and Tuesday. They're prepping all these things. If they still have some left, the best time for like the green sauce and everything and the mole is like on the weekends, because that's where it's like it's been enriched all week hanging out. And by the time you get there, it's just in the beginning of the week, some of the sauces can be a little spicy, and like the chile guero, like it can be a little spicy, but if you let it like mellow out a little bit by the weekend time, it's very rich. And so we've had other offers to buy the restaurant as well, the central location, and we're split now because it makes money every month. And so this is like, I'm sure this is conversations you have with people, like it makes money every month. I like that it makes money every month, but although I'm making money every month, I still assume a liability of that business operating every day. And so I asked myself, I'm like, well, at what cost would someone have to pay me for me to be like, take the money and then I'll offload the liability? And so that's been something that we're balancing. And we have people, I'm trying to think here, I don't think anyone who goes to my restaurant or works in my restaurant watches my podcast. So I'll say this, pause for a second. Right, think about that. No one, mostly because it's in English, so it's a good thing. And we have people going to the restaurant now, experiencing it, and then making us offers on it still. We still are entertaining offers on the restaurant, and we've gotten good offers, but it's complicated because the building owner only wants to have us, because whoever gets the restaurant is going to have to continue the lease, and the building owner doesn't want the restaurant to be owned by gringos. Right, I'll say it, Americans. Right, it's okay. My wife's from Mexico. A naturalized now, a Mexican citizen. He tolerates me because of her. Right, and it's not that he doesn't like Americans. Right, he's a very affluent man from Mexico City. He just wants to ensure that there's opportunity for Mexican business owners inside a flourishing town that has a lot of international visitors. And so in that particular building is a prime location. So he just wants to make sure that there's opportunity for Mexicans to go there. And so we've had some crazy offers from Canadians, right? And couldn't sell to them because they're Canadian, right? And so I was trying to help him, like, what you need to do is get a Mexican partner, right? And he's your face, you're the money, right? And then you have the business. So, but we're still entertaining offers, and I'm willing to sell it for the right price, just so I don't have to have a restaurant. But for now, we're just going to continue expanding. We're getting ready to, we make a lot of bread, make all our bread every week, fresh, some of it same day. And we started supplying a lot of it to other restaurants and other hotels in the region. There's about 400 restaurants in this city, Lakeside, about 400 restaurants, which is crazy because there's only about 15,000, national residents there.
Wow. Yeah.
And so competitive job market as well. And so we start it's doing well. We'll keep expanding until someone purchases it. So we're literally opening a facility that just bakes our bread, because we have about 6 clients right now who consume a lot of our bread every day. And our chef is a phenomenal baker.
That's wonderful. I went on a trip a couple years ago, and I didn't realize how skilled the culture is in Mexico with baking and
yeah, neither.
I experienced some of their amazing products and things, and everyone talks about France and all that. I thought it was better, honestly. It was phenomenal, some of the food products that we had, and it was such a wonderful trip there. But yeah, it sounds like the landlord wants to preserve the culture, which is an admirable thing to do. So why not?
Very much so. No,
Yeah.
we love it too, and we were because my restaurant is called Los Gringos Cafe, right? Which is a hilarious name that I came up with as a joke, right? It was a joke. I was
Very
sitting around and exactly, I'm sitting around the table with my family, my Mexican family, and I'm like, we should call this thing Los Gringos Cafe. Like, how funny would that be? They all loved it. I was joking. Like, no, this is a hilarious name. Like, we should call it Los Gringos Cafe. They'll think that's so funny. The hilarious part is it keeps us so incredibly relevant because people hate it. And by people, I mean the Americans and Canadians hate it. The Mexicans think it's hilarious. And so they think it's funny, like, Los Gringos Cafe. That's funny, right? And it's become very popular. It's the place that people go to like take Instagram photos. Like people get dressed up to go to have brunch here with their friends, kind of thing. And so it's a really, really pretty, tons of plants. Like it looks like a little garden. And so it's like it has like 60 something seats, so it's not little, but it looks like a garden. And but it's been interesting because the gringos are like, oh, I'm not going to eat there. They only allow gringos there. And so, something as simple as name. We've had people come to us like, I want to buy it, but I want to change the name. And I said, okay. I'm like, I don't care if you change the name. I say, if you're going to change the name, can I own the name rights, right? You're going to buy the restaurant. I'm like, can I keep the name rights? Because the name is the brand. And I thought you were buying the brand. You don't want to buy the brand. I'll keep the brand. It's like buying McDonald's and then changing it. And I said, because the entire city knows what Los Gringos Cafe is. So if you want to buy it, sure, I want to keep the name then, right? You can just name it whatever you want.
I completely agree. I think that's an interesting move. So again, not taking what's been built. It's interesting with some of the folks that are trying to buy businesses or acquire things, and their first move is to change part of the core value and structure and kind of heart of the business or the company. It's just kind of funny to me, but in that case, I think solid move on your part if that happens. Retain it.
Hey, look, I will never miss an opportunity, right? That's why when I got that original lease agreement with that club, I was like, you know what? Let's see if these guys will give me exclusivity, right? Let's just see it, right? And turns out through discovery, through the lawsuit, right, they never intended on actually honoring the original contract. Right. They intended the entire time to use us as a test to see if it was viable. And then they were going to break our contract and then build their own restaurant or take over our restaurant. Unfortunately for them, while I go through life living in a garden, people should not forget I'm very much a warrior. And I was like, let's take off these gloves. Like, let's do this. It was such an interesting thing over a restaurant of all things. Figure I get to healthcare.
Yeah, they threw the haymaker right out of the gate. It didn't need to happen. They could have done the right thing and made a fair offer, and everyone would have won. But did you have like a halfway house or something for food and beverage as well on the course? Or
so they had 27 courts, right? Not including pickleball. We're talking tennis courts, right? It was a racket club, 2 pools, right? And then we also delivered to the homes. And so we had delivery to the homes via scooter. We had runners to the courts, and we'd have people go take orders at the courts. And then we had 12 seats on the terrace. And so we had I love that. I actually love that location so much because it did twice the revenue of the first location with a fourth of the rent per month. It was beautiful. And it just pumped out profit. And so it was very unfortunate. But when we were going through all this, and the counter offer I gave them is about, I want to say it's 20 times less than what they'll pay out in court. And so the settlement is 20 times more than what my original counter offer was when they said when we want to purchase. Like it's literally 20 times more than what they could have just bought it for. It's hilarious. Legal people are, and then this is the world we live in. Like, James, to get back to your lawyer thing, right? Talking about having someone specific to this and legalities. They wanted to offer us an out-of-court settlement, right? And they're like, let's do this out of court. We'll give you cash, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yes, if you had not had 2 years of bad history with you, right? But the lawyer's like, no, absolutely. We have to do this. He's like, listen, we have to do this by the book with the government, documented in court, because if we don't do it this way, they will find a loophole, right? He's like, if we do this just on paper document, you and me, like a gentleman's agreement kind of thing, they'll find a way to get you. And that gets back to, what you said, James, having a good advisor in all these things.
100%. And I think that was obviously the right move there. And hopefully it also sets a precedent so that it doesn't continue to happen. That's the big thing too, is that by them paying out X, hopefully they'll think twice the next time when they try to take advantage of somebody else, another small business owner.
Yeah.
Etc.
Well,
Unfortunately, that's not how it works a lot of times, but maybe they'll look at the numbers the next time and not do it.
Well, unfortunately for them, they have, because my wife is the sweetest. She's like a koala bear when she's not mad, but she's also like a honey badger when she is mad. And so one of the ways that she squeezed them, because they tried everything to squeeze us. I mean, lawsuits are people. Just understand that people like James exist here in this world to prevent things like lawsuits and mess and headache. Like, they're very scary, right? We had assets frozen in Mexico, right, because of this lawsuit under claims of illicit gain, right? Like, every trick out of the bag, these folks pulled it, right? Called in favors from everybody, right? We're very lucky that we came, but one of the tactics that we employed was, it's easy to fight. I'm a former Marine here. It's easy to fight one-on-one. So we just help them have more issues, right? I said, well, surely if they're doing this to us, they've done it to other people. And so we helped sum up about 26 other pending lawsuits that were being, pushed down. We gathered all these people together, created a WhatsApp and Facebook group, and then matched them with lawyers that they could trust. And then so they had just one lawsuit, and now they had 26 other ones, and they started bleeding money, which brought them to the table, right? They're like, oh, we can't afford to keep fighting. We can't afford to fight 26 lawsuits, right? That's expensive. And all that could have been avoided I think I could have been avoided. I was new to the market, right? New to this area. I think if I would have taken time to get some advice from other business owners and people in the community, I would have known the more tyrannic practices of the management and board of this club. I had learned about that through the process as we went through the city and we're doing all these legalities. Like, oh yeah, they've done this before. Our lawyer, funny enough, who runs the law firm, 20 years ago, he had a similar hiccup with the same club when he owned a restaurant. And so they just locked his doors one day, kicked out his taco stand. This is 20 years ago. And so when he came across, he's like, this is a sign from God that I'm meant to take your case. He's like, they did something similar to me 20 years ago. And I was like, and they've been doing this for people forever. And I could have taken time to do some market research or maybe chat with some other people versus being an aggressive, bullheaded entrepreneur and just being like, money, restaurant, location, let's do business.
Basically took gasoline on that pain point from 20 years ago and relit the fire. And that's always good to have a partner that's completely aligned with you to accomplish a similar goal. Definitely think that was a very smart move, looping them and the other folks that they had taken advantage of too, to really impact their cash flow too. So it's not something you want to do. When you mentioned very sweet, your wife being very sweet and then can go to honey badger, it reminded me of my wife, Liz, as well. So she's incredibly nurturing. And then if you get on her bad side or do something that's not the right thing to do, then she'll turn pretty quick. And
chat me there. What did your wife do before and how did she come to work in this venture? Was this a joint venture where you're like, hey, let's both do this? Or was this something where you started and she's like, you know what, you need me? And you're like, yeah, obviously. Of course I need you. You come make my life better, right? How did that come to fruition, the wife combination?
Yeah, we actually met at work where I was a consultant. Basically, I was a fractional CFO and she was the COO. It was a food and beverage company. So where both of our kind of passions came back and why I do enjoy the story that you just told. So we were essentially just coworkers, and we, ironically, were doing a lot of the work we were doing now. We just didn't call it exit planning. We were just it was just business strategy, so to speak. So we eventually just kind of a few years later started a relationship and went from there. And then strategically, I started my business while she got her real estate license and then got into the M&A world. And then as I exited, I came back into the team aspect. So now we're working in tandem. Basically, she used to be in hospitality and food and beverage. She used to run a lot of the very large events at the University of Chicago and did some very nice and complex events for that university. So she's, again, comes back to the project management, very much customer service focused. And it kind of combines exactly with our personalities. We want to be very, very helpful, and we want to make it a little bit easier and smoother for any potential client. And so we kind of combine the two concepts.
No, I love that. And I also met my wife at work as well. I was an executive at a company and she was a leader in the HR department. We were friends for a long time. And then after we both went, separate ways, we're like, hey, we actually like each other. Like, this is nice. And now she very much, when telehelping started off, she was very much involved, right, with people because she managed people, specifically understanding Mexican culture, right? And then at our restaurant, she knows how to handle people. As an HR woman, she just knows how to have conversations with people. And so I think that's great that you met her at work and then she found her way back into her core functions. And then I have a very similar story. So that's really cool. You know what, James, one thing, if you and your wife ever make your way to central Mexico, you can dine at my restaurant for free. It's a great little city called Ajijic. It's Ajiji. It's actually the oldest documented city in the Spanish colonies when they started Mexico. Like, it was one of the first at like 1560 something. And so it's right there on the largest lake in Mexico. And so it's called a Pueblo de Mexico. And so it's a magic city. It's very beautiful. It's preserved on purpose to look like Mexican in terms of España. And so definitely it's just kind of hidden right there in the middle of Mexico. If you ever make your way down to central Mexico, not a bad place, 45 minutes south of Guadalajara. So definitely a beautiful place to go and relax. It's quiet, right? It's a retirement village. They call it God's waiting room.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Would love to come visit. That sounds amazing. I'm sure we would enjoy that very much. So I really appreciate the invitation.
Of course. Well, James, sir, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think that one of the overarching themes that we've had from this roundabout conversation in regards to business is you just need to have someone you can trust, right? I mean, I'm a great example of someone who had a ton of business success with large exits and liquidations, and then go in to start a small restaurant and find myself in a very fierce lawsuit that could have been avoided, I think, if I had leveraged the right resources and information. So I think that what you offer folks, both large and small, is invaluable, and I'm excited to be connected with you and continue our relationship forward.
Absolutely. And really appreciate you having me. Completely agree with that. Build out your advisory team, have some trusted partners, and you're going to go a long way, especially with good people, helping good people. That's just what we're all about. And just having a trusted partner in your exit strategy. So I really appreciate the time today.
No, thank you, James. Be well, sir.
Take care.
This video was brought to you by our official sponsor, Telehelping. Need support for your business? Telehelping connects you with top-tier remote staff to help you streamline operations and fuel growth. Go to telehelping.com and get started today.